Hi everyone, this is Karak from ACG, and today I'm bringing you a review for a little game called Death by Gameshow for the PC. Sadly, this isn't the awesome idea of mixing American gladiators, wildlife safari, and prisoners getting out on parole. Instead, this is a callback to Beavis and Butthead style humor with a mixture of arcade game and tower defense on a 2D plane, all mixed together to see what comes out. Let's see how it did, shall we? As always, if you liked the video, maybe subscribe. So here's the review for Death by Gameshow. Enemies with gold coins for hearts, stinky gym locker sidekicks, and being labeled too smart by folks with IQs less than most college sorority second story frequenters. So let's do this. Graphics are up first. One thing about Death by Gameshow is that it's eye-catching in its delivery of a unique mixture of yellows and strangely muted greens and just different colors overall. The game feels like a mixture of Beavis and Butthead and maybe a bit of Family Guy, and the world around it is just a little bit bent regardless of what you're doing. Now, whether you're releasing self-propelled strangely phallic bombs at the enemies or fighting off what looks like large microwaves with pusher arms, it's always interesting visually. Now, that being said, it had shockingly bad performance across 3 different testing systems and was not able to stick at 60 frames per second even on the powerful system with the GTX 980. Unacceptable when it comes to performance. Here's the issue though. Much of the title seems completely random, from the designs of the creatures to the attacks and weapons and buildings in the world state it exists in. You're supposedly in a game show, but once you're gaming, there's 1 or 2 indicators that you are, unless you're actually picking levels. Everything else just sort of seems like it's glued together. You're flown to this random planet in a spaceship to fight off random robots, but you're attached to a gym locker. It's really just out there, and not in a cohesive way like all of the different fictions that it sort of purports to be following, but in a more of a, hey, look at me, I'm out here kind of way. Your mileage may vary, but even the upgrades are notoriously all over the place with no real identifiable theme. Which means graphically, though it looks good, it's artistically all over the place and its performance isn't very good. Sound, music, and voice.
Eliminated.
Ooh, savage. You got no chill.
Now, sound is the very definition of average, with a good deal of it crowding into the center of the sound spectrum like the high and low ends or some kind of monsters under the bed that it's afraid of. That means it's ultimately uninformative while playing, resulting in everything making a muddy menagerie of splashes. Basically, if your flying robots are smashing into buildings at the same time your oddly dick-shaped robots are speed demoning into the enemy, like they're giving explosive artificial insemination a try for science, it's all gonna sound pretty much the same. At its best, it's okay. But most of the time, I would actually say it's a little bit below average. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to music. You know, I could see a lot of people liking this. It's professionally done with a low-thrumming guitar chord in a really somewhat minimalistic style throughout all the tracks that at times really made me think of spaghetti western vibes. And there are a couple unique tracks that mirror the oddness of the title itself and have a good theme flowing throughout the entire game. I would say as a whole, it's average. Some people are really going to like this, but I think some people are going to sort of miss what they were aiming for. Voice. Okay. Jesus, it's bad. Actually, if bad is a point in space, this is circling around in a giant loop after starting at bad, then slamming back into it so you can get mad and kick bad's ass. They are terribly recorded, sound highly amateurish, and most make no sense within the structure of the title. In fact, much of the title seems like it's this list of jokes variety, which means saying random crap without anything on the screen actually representing a reason to say it. What's worse is, even if the voices sounded that way on purpose, they would still sound actually pretty bad. It's like setting out to make a B movie and thinking that B only relates to the budget aspect, so you record everybody inside of a tin can. Sweet Jesus, that's not actually how it's done. The voices are not good. Gameplay. So you're in the future and you play UH a man who's been sentenced to death by Gameshow because you're too smart. Though nothing within the game actually hints anything like this being the case, but you're thrust into a level that's like a little mini Earth, and you run left or right while being followed by a giant floating locker. This is where your robot minions, 9 or 10 of them, can spawn from. Of course, spawn too many and your locker buddy falls to the ground, and of course, since you're chained to it, it slows you down and you have to drag him around until he sort of reinvigorates himself. You can also build some buildings as well, which can help you by defending certain spots or unleashing wicked fiery death on enemies, and later they can be upgraded to well, pretty much a lot of the same thing. One nice addition is you can adjust a difficulty slider prior to each level, which is nice to be able to adjust it, so if you find yourself playing level 9-1 about 91 friggin' times, you can sort of make it a little easier. The gameplay is actually a mix of tower defense with a little bit of strategy, so the similarities with hits like Swords and Soldiers is going to be there. Money mysteriously sinks into the earth like reverse oil, meaning you need to pick it up before it disappears, which is the lowest level you interact on. In the air and on the ground, you're going to get continually assaulted by enemies spawning from almost limitless spawn lockers and other locations, which are the remaining 2 levels that you interact on. In a stunning omission, there's no jump button, which wouldn't have made the game much easier, but certainly would have made things a bit more enjoyable and dynamic. Also, the enemies, they're a little bit like flight attendants, crop dusting passengers from a yard away, because these characters invisibly hit you, with only the real connection being that you all inhabit a location somewhat near one another. If it was this easy to hit enemies, I'd be the damn UFC champion. Now, through each level, you're given very arcade-like goals, like collect $5 million, which you use your grappling arm to get the coins, as I said. But the real problem here is theme. The plain and simple fact is the inherent interest in much of the source material shows a stunning miscalculation of what the original fictions offered viewers, especially from Mike Judge. For example, King of the Hill wasn't just constant urethra jokes, it was the comfort and continual TMI awkwardness of low to middle income family life. It really wants you to think it's funny, it strives, it aches, and it almost teeters under the weight of its desire to make you think it's enjoyable and hilarious, from robot one-liners about ass raping to smoking dope. What is funny within context loses all enjoyment when blurted out like a bunch of third graders seeing who can yell fuck the loudest. The underlying game is actually somewhat enjoyable and certainly deep enough to elicit a little bit of a desire to see what's around the next horribly stupid one-liner. As a fan of every one of the references and influences that the website says this game aims for, the one thing they missed is that those jokes made sense because there was an overall state of the worldview. Here everything is so random, nothing flows from one moment to the next, and this results in a sound feeling separate from voice, feeling separate from theme, feeling separate from gameplay. Now that may all sound bad, and it's actually not. There is some game there. Lastly, much of the game can be edited with the game editor. Not sure if anyone will take the time, but that could really extend the life of the title and in fact make it actually quite enjoyable. Fun factor. You know, you really would think that running around with a giant robot arm grabbing coins would be somewhat fun, right? And it is at times, but the correct term is somewhat, and that's the problem. Most of the gameplay here is completely bog standard. Many times, defense for these kind of games is a drunken pointing a finger saying you don't get this kind of humor. Really, a game always benefits from bringing something new to the genre, and sadly, this doesn't, which leaves the humor that Death by Gameshow so overtly puts in your face becoming a blanket over the entire product. This is the opposite of flashy graphics hiding a AAA game's rotten heart. This is the acceptable gameplay buried at the bottom of a trash can filled with references to butt plugs and prison rape. What is there is a game that controls somewhat well and is playable throughout, but will do its best to make many gamers not want to experience it. As you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for sale, rent, or of course deep sale if it's a PC game, and then never touch it. This is a wait for a deep sale. Listen, there is somewhat of an okay and enjoyable game here, but issues with slow tooltop loading, no jump button because, well, reasons, and the blanket of bullshit that positively suffocates it in a meandering third grader speakathon means that it's either going to be ignorable or not when it comes to the theme. If the theme's ignorable by you, then the gameplay within the title is pedestrian but workable, and the difficulty slider really does help to adjust the game if a level's a little too difficult. If it's not something you can ignore, you are never gonna want to hear the title music again. So that's it for me. I hope you guys liked the review. If you did, maybe give it a thumbs up, share it, talk to people about it, what have you. If you didn't, always give it a thumbs down, and peace out.